Hey guys, welcome back to more Pro Revenge Reddit stories. Today's Ripe Stories video is all about entitled awful bosses getting exactly what they deserve. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, Be abusive to employees, say bye-bye to your job. So my former boss was, simply put, an absolute douche. He was the type of person that had the ability to be so condescending while acting as if he was doing you a favor. His condescending attitude was sometimes downright abusive, and he seemed to have a particular problem with all of the female employees. He acted as if they were dumb and needed assistance with every step. He loves to scream at people, regardless of how little their mistake was, if there even was one. He was essentially a slave driver and expected everyone to sacrifice their own personal lives for their job. The thing that sparked this revenge, though, was him telling me to miss my older sister's birthday to come into work on a day that I already booked off. No one liked him, let me tell you. Me and all of my colleagues in the department, around 10 people or so, could not stand him being here anymore. So we did the protocol. All of us piled together the evidence we had of him not sticking to booked off holiday schedules, having inappropriate and sometimes abusive language, and we brought it all in one Google document. This was step number 1. Step number 2 was getting a cherry on top. We did this by getting him to do one of his crazy screaming tantrums at one of us. We wanted this to be as damning as possible, and the youngest and smallest girl out of all of us volunteered to be the bait. She made an intentional beginner's mistake in her paperwork, something bound to get her wrought at, and the idiot took the bait. You see, he likes to do his scoldings in front of all of us to prove a point, or rule by fear, as he called it. This gave us the perfect opportunity to film it from behind our desks and add it to the Google document. Now, you see, in our company there's this really not well-made email system. You can send an email to an entire department, and I mean entire, as long as you have its name and manager's name. But the thing about this was the fact that all of this information was completely and freely given to employees, and this means that a person could send whatever email they want to the entire company, including the CEO. So then, one morning at 10 AM, to ensure that as many people would be working as possible, we made a burner email and sent the Google document through an email to everyone in the company. It took a little while as there were many departments to get through, but we got there in the end. We gave the email the subject, boss's name, vital information, branch name, department name. And of course our boss received the email as well, and you could basically hear the clutter from his office as people all over the company were contacting him to ask him what the hell this was about. HR did a light investigation into him and took heavy disciplinary action. As far as I know, he was not directly fired, but instead he resigned. And a month after that we never saw him again, and he was replaced by a new guy who was also an a-hole, but just less of one. His expressions during the whole ordeal helped me sleep at night though. And yeah guys, if you've ever worked for an awful boss in your life, please feel free to share your story in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video, because that would help me tremendously. Thanks a lot, and now let's move on to the next pro revenge story, and this one is absolutely insane. It is titled, Act like a douchebag and try to get me fired? You will lose everything. Background: I work for a communications company. We primarily sell internet-based all-in-one communication solutions for businesses, and I am in the software development department, working as a software tester currently. I've been with the company a long time, have worked my way up from phone support, and have a ton of knowledge about the company, including policy and culture. I also have a relative who has worked in HR for many years. The story: I'd been working as a software tester for about 2 years doing manual testing, and our team was fairly unsupervised as we didn't really have a manager. But the company was expanding quickly, so they hired us a manager. Enter Jay, the a-hole. At first things were fine, he was just learning the company. However, it was odd. He never asked anyone for any information, he just said he would do his own research and spent the first month online reading stuff. Not sure what that taught him about our company specifically though. After the first month he hit the ground running. He immediately started creating automation tests, adding to the existing testing code, and creating stupid rules that made no sense. He broke tons of crap and took credit for work that was not his. Everyone hated him, and we all referred to him as Ducking Jay. For the most part, we all ignored him. As of this point, no one has specifically said he was our manager. He was just here to help provide direction. Fast forward a few months and everyone on the team wants to quit. No one can stand him. He and I butt heads more so than others because I know he is wrong and I make my decisions based on the best interests of the customers. He hated that I never get in trouble, but I was hand-selected for the position by our CIO. He knows how hard I work, and well, Jay keeps trying to get me in trouble. And he finally succeeds. I get a write-up from him that is my final warning. I've never been written up before. I talk to my HR family member, review the company handbook, and then I go to HR with my write-up. I fight and I win. And I get a warning instead. Jay is livid. He gives me the stink eye for months to follow. Fast forward again and he's still after me, but I have a family emergency coming up. I gotta move out of town. I apply to work from home and my request is granted. Jay cannot stand it. He tries to fight it and convince the company not to let me. However, he's not high enough up the chain to override my approval from a C-level manager. He's running out of time to get me fired. I'm in the office working late, daily planning for my move and finishing up some work to allow me time off for the move. One of the company's policies for our department is that everyone gets to work from home 1 day a week. You pick as long as it is not Monday or Friday. People often use this to work from home when sick, and well, I have a medical condition that sometimes requires I take medicine. That means I cannot drive a car. I emailed the office and let them know I was going to work from home due to being sick, and I work for about 30 minutes and then Jay sends me a message. He tells me that employees are not allowed to pick when they work from home and I need to take the day off and use PTO. I inform him that I've already worked part of the day and cannot take PTO. He insists that I stop working immediately, so I do. I then contact HR and be sure I know he's coming after me. I confirm that as a salaried employee, if I work at all in day, I cannot be required to take PTO. HR confirms it, I forward the email to Jay, and once again I've won the game, and he is so pissed that I can see steam coming out of his ears every time he looks at me. The next day, I'm back to work, and then Jay sends me an email with a final write-up with a recommendation for termination because I took a so-called unauthorized day off. What the hell? I immediately forward his email to HR with proof that he told me to take the day. A screenshot of all the conversations I had with him about it, and proof I forwarded the previous HR decision to him. In the email, I also included that I was filing a formal complaint against him for a hostile workplace targeting, bullying, retaliating, and a violation of my ADA rights. The response is swift, sweet, and awesome. I'm immediately notified by Jay's boss that moving forward I report directly to him, my write-up had been torn up and I can start working from home immediately prior to my move. Jay is demoted from being the manager of the team. He is super pissed. Within 2 weeks, they demoted him from being the manager of his other team and then let him go within the month. Prior to his being fired, I got promoted up a level, and I made sure to mention it often in our group chat channels. After I showed his true colors to management, he began treating everyone else even worse as I was now off limits. Complaints rolled in so much, they had to let him go. Serves him right, the a-hole. And because it was so satisfying, the next one is another story about an awful boss getting his just desserts. This story is also from r/pro-revenge and is titled "Made my ex-boss lose $25,000 on his salary, so I used to work at a Wendy's as a manager." It was already a crappy job, but my general manager was nice and most employees were easy to deal with. All this started when I was already working 65 hours per week. I was offered a $100 bonus to work on one of my only days off. I decided to do it, and later that week, before I'd even been paid, I was asked to come in again. I said this time I would like $150 as at this point I'd worked almost 23 days without any days off. They said they would do it, so in I went. Cut forward 3 weeks, I've been asking about my money for a while now. I'm told by my general manager that I could speak to my district manager as he would be in later that night. The conversation goes like me, "Hey, do you know what's going on with the bonus? I'm owed like $250 with both the days." District manager, "Well, that's why I came here. The store's been having trouble making money, so basically, he's telling me that my performance is not good enough." At this point, I'm working dinner rush and the whole night with me and 3 others, my GF best friend and other friend that has grown close. District manager, Your shift is not making as much money as others and your drive time is higher. Me, well, we are doing all we can. It takes extra time when we only have half the number of people with the same amount of customers. District manager, that's really no excuse. Me, when am I gonna receive my bonus? My DM was a very sheepish man, so he is very obviously scared when he tells me this. District manager, we cannot give you a bonus until the revenue rises and drive's time goes down. I'm speechless at this point. The rest of the conversation was a blur. I grew up on the south side and you didn't mess with people's money. A day passes and I've had time to collect myself and speak to my entire crew, and well, everyone agrees to walk out with me. So then I call my district manager. The phone starts to ring, but then it cuts off. He declined my call. So I called him again and again and again. Finally, I just leave him a voicemail. Me, look Jacob, you need to talk to me. You have until 8:45 to call me back or all of the night crew is done. At this point, it is 7:30. I go into my office and start watching my boss's email. She leaves it open and logged in. I figured he would probably email her before calling me. Around 20 minutes of watching this email and boom, an email pops up. It says, "Emergency, Lonnie." This idiot put my name on the email, so of course I read it. Long story short, in the email it was him trying to make sure my general manager was gonna be ready to go to work, aka he was not gonna call me or give me my money, so I get all my people together and we walk out, leaving everything out, all the meat, all the toppings, the fryer, just everything, and the next day I turn in my keys. About a week later, I'm called by my brother. Me, what's up? Brother, Jacob lost all of his stores, he has to go back to Indiana. My brother worked at the store as well. If you don't know, district managers' pay is based on the amount of stores they have and how much they make, and when he moved to Indiana, his wages got reduced for $65,000 to around just $40,000, and all of this for $250. And the next one is another story from r/pro revenge, and it is titled, "They Are Your Rules." And by the way guys, just for your information, this story was posted many years ago. Anyway, I was an English teacher in Moscow. At the beginning of the school year, I asked for a week of time off around a holiday so I could travel some. I got denied, so the week it came around, I was pleased that most of my classes had been cancelled anyway, because the students had the same idea I had and were all going on vacation. I get an email from the administration stating that I was to cover classes for another teacher who was taking vacation for the week I had asked for. So yeah, I was already a bit upset about that they had approved him but not me, especially since I had asked for it like 5 months ago. But anyway, I accept the hand that was dealt and start preparing lessons. The day of the first class, I leave home a few hours early so that I had plenty of time to make sure I could find the place. It was a location that I had never been to and that I had all the necessary equipment I needed to read the lessons. It was pretty easy to find, but when I rang the bell, there was no answer. I had some time, so I went off to get a snack. I come back to the school about 30 minutes early and ring the bell again, but no answer. I try calling the school's administrator, no answer. I try calling the administrator who assigned the classes, no answer. For over an hour I rang the doorbell and called multiple times to no avail. My contract stated that I had to wait 30 minutes for students to show up before I could leave. So then at the 30-minute mark I sent a text to all parties that read something along the lines of, "I was here on time. I waited half an hour after the scheduled time, but nobody answered the door. I'm going back home. It will take me 20 minutes to get to the metro. If you call me before I board, I will turn around and come back." Well, when I got home, I got a call that said, "Where the hell are you?" "At home. You have a class." "I'm aware." I was there and nobody answered the door. I called and nobody answered, and I also left a text. I was then told that texting is not an approved form of communication. Now, this was before I had a phone with a data plan, so text was the only way I could message someone. They tried docking my pay for this, but when I told the owner what had happened and showed him my call logs and the text I left, he made sure that did not happen. Fast forward a few months. I'd been having a lot of issues with the administration, so I'd become an expert on the finer details of our contract. One of those details was that the administration could not assign a class with less than 72 hours notice, so when they called on Saturday to give me a class for Monday, I told them no. Again, they tried to dock my pay. The owner cited me and told me I was right. My favorite part though was receiving a text that said I was to teach a class on a given day. They even made special mention of the 72-hour rule. I ignored the text. When the time for class came around, I got another call that said, "Where the hell are you?" "At home. You have a class." "No, I don't. I sent you a text. I have it saved." Texting is not an approved form of communication. The next one is a super satisfying malicious compliance story that is titled, I should cancel on my end? Well, no problem. So I booked accommodation 2 months in advance for St. Patrick's weekend in Dublin. It was a fairly ancient B&B, but for 115 euros it was a place to sleep and the cheapest option for the busiest weekend of the year in Dublin. It was a 1 double bed for me and a buddy to share. It was pay on arrival. 3 weeks before the stay, the accommodation manager messaged me on the app I booked the stay on telling me there's a problem. I can no longer stay and to cancel on my side immediately. No apology, let alone help offered by them. This was followed by multiple phone calls daily along with text messages in a harassing nature saying that I need to cancel now so I can get my money back. Once again, it was pay on arrival. I did not answer the calls or messages telling me to cancel. Something felt off, so I checked the listing for the night I was supposed to stay, and it just so happens the accommodation had been listed again for double the price. So likely the manager realized that St. Patrick's weekend was a cash grab, maybe not immediately, but at the property manager's request I simply rang up booking.com and told them I would like to cancel my booking. The customer service rep asked why I was canceling, and I explained in detail all the above to her, and things took an unexpected turn for the property manager. Ultimately, the rep agreed the property was acting in an unfair manner, and the solution was that booking.com would find me accommodation within 1 kilometer. Originally, they tried to get me to stay way outside of the city, but I was not having it of where I intended to stay. The original property would then be liable to cover any difference in cost. So here's the good part, finding accommodation 3 weeks before St. Patrick's Day in Dublin is about as difficult as trying to light a fire with flint and steel in the rain, which means near impossible. Everything within a 1 kilometer range was booked out except for a well-known 4-star hotel. The room alone cost 350 euros per night and had 2 double beds, much bigger rooms and in a nicer location. The customer rep had to get it cleared by her team lead, so I just sat on hold doing chores for 25 minutes. And yeah guys, to be honest, that is also my experience with booking.com. I never had issues there, but I always hear of people that have a lot of problems with websites like Booking or Agoda, so I'm curious, have you ever had any issues with them? Let me know in the comments, I'm really curious. Also, eventually they came back and said it was all signed off on and they would send me a special link. What a treat, I gladly accepted their compromise. This in turn meant the property owner that tried to force me to cancel on my end was now indebted 235 euros and we got a massive upgrade for the same price we originally had. I had to pay the 350 euro upfront and had to keep receipts and show proof of payment to the booking partner after our stay, but got my refund of 235 euros the following week. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Jumping straight into this, I want to give some background to the story. My grandpa recently passed away due to some illnesses he's been fighting on and off for most of his life. In his passing, he left me his property, which came as a shock to all of us because I certainly was not his favorite grandchild. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, this property is roughly 50 acres, so yes, it's a big deal. Most of the property is lush forest, but in the center of it all sits a house some would consider it to be more of a small mansion than a house, with a long gravel driveway stretching all the way to the main road nearby. As I'm sure you have guessed, this was where he lived before he passed. However, he did not really keep the place in the best of nick, lots of rotting planks and damp walls, etc. So I decided I would slowly but surely put some money into the place and do it up. The potential was massive for it to become something just gorgeous. And then the plan would be to either sell it and share the money across my family, or my parents could move in. I live around 6 miles away, so in my free time I go down and do some work on it. It became one of my favorite hobbies. Anyone who has done up a house will know that although it can be quite tedious, it certainly is satisfying work. So this story begins with a particular weekend in June. This is about 10 months after I had started renovating the place. I was on my way down as usual and noticed that the gate which connected the driveway to the main road was slightly ajar. The lock was loose. I figured that the last time I was there, which was a few days prior, I must have forgotten to lock it and didn't think much of it. Of course, I did slightly worry that someone might have been in and had a snoop around, but I chose to push that thought to the side. On this day, everything was fine and I had another day of renovating. I would like to point out at this point, the house was not a mess or anything. I basically always put everything away in the shed after a day's work and hoovered all the carpets, etc. You will see why this is relevant later. Oh, and also, I did have professionals in too. It was not just me doing this. I would have never gotten the majority of it done in such time otherwise. Moving on, this day happened to be the last before I went on a very long and boring work trip for 2 months. I made sure to lock the gate, but after those months had passed and I was on my way back to the property, I saw the lock was loose again. But this time, as I drove up the driveway, I saw a car parked out the front of the house. I froze. I saw a few lights on in the house and my heart started beating. I could not think of who else had access to the property. My mother keeps the spare key and she lived hours away and has a different car. So I did what every stupid person in a horror movie does. I unlocked the door and walked inside, yelling, "Hello?" I heard quiet voices and then heard footsteps. A man and a woman, both in robes, appeared at the top of the stairs. "Excuse me, what are you doing here? We have rented the place for the whole week," the man demanded. "Sir, this is my property and I most certainly don't rent it out." "What are you doing here?" The couple looked between themselves. "A lady named Karen rented this out to us. Is this really not her property? It did seem a little sketchy that she had to pick the gate lock." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I got them to call this Karen lady and within 10 minutes she had arrived. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, all smiles. "Who are you and why are you renting out my property?" I asked. Sir, this is my property." "What? You heard me. This is my property." "It most surely is not. Where's your proof?" "Well, I've been renting out the place for the past few weeks. How could I be renting out something that is not mine?" "Past few weeks? Ma'am, you know this is not your property and you've been trespassing and letting others trespass for weeks." "I think we're gonna call the cops. They will sort this." The man from the top of the stairs spoke. "Nope, nonsense. No need." "You two, clear out," Karen demanded, clearly nerved by the threat of the cops, knowing that she had no proof for all of this. After a lot of arguing between the couple and Karen, the pair left and Karen stayed put. "Listen, what's the issue with me renting this place?" she asked, and I now of course knew the real reason. The gate had been ajar the first time I noticed it. "What's the issue?" "The issue is that this is not your property and you had no permission." "Well, I'm gonna rent it out anyway. I need the money." Her voice was raising. "No, you are absolutely not. Who do you think you are? You have no right to do this. Stop acting so entitled." "How dare you? That's the rudest thing I've heard all day. I'm your senior, sir. Don't disrespect me." "Yeah, I can tell," I remarked, causing her face to redden slightly. "I cannot believe this," she screamed and stomped out, getting in her car and driving away. I stayed over that night ordering a new gate and lock to be fitted the very next day. I also ordered CCTV and filed a police report because I had a very big suspicion that I had not heard the end of her. The next day I had everything fitted and unfortunately had to go back to work the following afternoon. It was not long before I got a notification from the CCTV app I had installed on my phone. I happened to be in a meeting when this notification went off and it was just a regular buzz like the rest of them. So I did not end up actually getting to it until an hour later, and by then it was too late. I clicked on and felt my heart almost stop once I saw what was unfolding on the lawn in front of the house. Karen was having a bonfire and around the bonfire were a good 30 to 40 people, a bonfire that was very close to the house. I almost couldn't believe it. I called the police straight away and started racing over. The police got there before I did and I saw where Karen had climbed the gate. The police broke through with some big metal clippers. I drove up to the house and saw that my worst fears had been confirmed. The house was on fire. It turns out the bonfire was certainly too close and must have spread to the house, which is primarily a wooden build with a gust of wind. After getting over the shock of the house partially in flames, I looked around and saw that most of the guests had run away and that Karen was currently in cuffs being detained by 2 officers, one who had a black eye, presumably from her, and there was also a fire truck putting out the flames. "Sir, are you the owner?" one of the officers asked me, kneeling down to my level, as at this point I'd gotten out of the car and collapsed to my knees. I stammered a nod. I barely heard what he said after that. Something about pressing charges, that they would punish this lady and get my statement after the fire was sorted with. So that is what happened. The fire was put out, a very large chunk of the house was gone or deteriorating. I could tell I would need new beams all over and a new roof at the very least. "Sir, I know this is hard, but this is my property!" I suddenly heard Karen scream from where she was being held. "You!" I yelled as I stormed over to her. "You did this! How could you? I wanted to have a bonfire, and hey, if it meant destroying your hard work in the process, what's the issue?" "What have I ever done to you?" I asked, and she stared at me with this look as if she wanted to say more but couldn't. It was almost a "how do you not know" look. To this day, I still don't know if there's something I had done to her, but that is an adventure to have another time. She did not respond, and that's when I started giving my statement to the police. I then went to my car and pulled out the deeds to the property to show them. Thankfully, I didn't keep them in the house. I also showed them the CCTV footage, and that was all they needed. They hauled her away and gave me a ride with them to the station. No court case was needed. After a property surveyor looked at the property, they would just charge her straight away for what she did. Of course, she was charged with trespassing, and arson was on there too, but as it turns out, she was stealing the credit cards of the people who she rented my property to, so she went down for fraud as well. If you are wondering how she managed to get a key for the door, I still have no idea. She didn't say how and just kept insisting it was her property. Part of me thinks there might be more to this story. Either way, she got 15 years in prison for the listed above. The property surveyor finalized that over $1 million of damages had been done, so of course that fine went straight to her. They also added a few $100,000 on top for the labor it will take to repair the place. I'm sure she will be spending the rest of her life, once out of prison, trying to pay that back. All this happened a few months ago, so of course the house is not fully fixed yet. We have decided not to sell the place. We feel like it would be giving her what she wanted if we do, in a weird way. I'm still weirded out by the whole situation, and I'm glad she got what she deserved, but I of course still wish that none of this ever happened in the first place. All I can hope is that after those 15 years, she does not come back, but something tells me I might not be so lucky. And the next one is a brilliant malicious compliance story, which is titled, "I don't care what you have to do to improve morale, just do it." This was in a commercial printing company after a couple of months of really ridiculous mandatory overtime. 12 hours per 7-day weeks. So one day when it was slow, I shut down production in the entire building. I gave them instructions to make the best paper airplane they could out of any piece of paper they can find in the shop. I stood at the end of the shop and judged whose plane flew the farthest and gave him the rest of the day off with pay. A couple of months later, after I discovered the Diet Pepsi and Mentos phenomenon, we did that in the parking lot for half an hour on the clock. Sometime later, while I was talking to the COO, who had given me the directive on increasing morale in the team, I brought this up and he said, "You did what? Any more incentives that cost the company money will have to go through me now." Okay. And yeah guys, thanks for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.